About 10 years ago, my girlfriend and I took a trip up to West Virginia for our 7th year anniversary. We were the type of couple who loved the outdoors and the pure beauty of nature. Mostly, couples would go out for dinner and binge drink at a bar or something like that for the anniversary, but we were the complete opposite. We hated the city and hated all the partying and enjoyed being somewhat isolated. We got to Virginia and wanted to rent a house deep into the woods to go hunting and exploring for a few days. We rented out this little log cabin for about $80 a night, which wasn't bad at all compared to some of the prices of the other cabins. The first night we got there, I believe was a Tuesday night, we unpacked and set our stuff up in the master bedroom. The cabin wasn't that big, but it was rather more cozy and an appropriate size for a couple. We arrived at the cabin very late that night, and after we had set everything up, we went out to go get some fast food as most restaurants were closed at this time. We ended up stopping at a nearby Burger King and ate it back at the cabin, and we went to bed soon after. Okay, so fast forward to the next morning, my girlfriend and I wake up, eat breakfast, and get ready for the hike we were planning to take. The hike was pretty long, maybe about 3 or 4 hours, but like I said, we both loved the outdoors, so we didn't mind it. At one point during the end of our hike, the sun was beginning to set, which meant that we had about a good hour of light before it got dark. As we were walking back, my girlfriend shushes me for some reason. She looks over to her left and said to me, "Did you see that tall person over there?" I didn't know what she was talking about as I didn't see anyone, so I just said, no, I didn't. My girlfriend dismissed it as another person taking another stroll through the woods, or perhaps other hikers. We made it back to our cabin before it got dark and cooked some dinner. At dinner, my girlfriend was very quiet and barely touching her food. It seemed like something was wrong, so I asked her. She sighed and told me that she felt paranoid about that big figure she saw that day. She explained that it looked too big to be anything human-like. It looked more like an ape. I told her that she probably just saw another hiker who just so happened to be big and tall, and not to worry about it. She cheered up a bit and we continued our nice peaceful dinner. However, the next day was the day when things started to get crazy. My girlfriend had gone to the store to get some more food. I was out back carving some wood with my knife when I heard what sounded like branches and twigs snapping very loudly. I sprinted bolt upright and looked to where the sounds were coming from. It was almost as if something big were walking in the trees. As soon as I saw what it was, my heart skipped multiple beats. My eyes were opened wide as I stared at the 10-foot tall gorilla-like creature. It had its eyes locked on me while still standing. At this point, I couldn't even move or speak. All I could do was watch this ape-like creature walk around the tree line. It then let out this horrifying, deep, unsettling sound that I still can't describe. It was similar to a roar, you could say, but in a more deeper tone. With that, it turned around and walked into the other direction, never to be seen again. I'll never, ever forget the dread I felt as I saw its glowing red eyes looking through my soul. I remained calm on the outside, but on the inside, I was freaking out, and no joke when I say I nearly had a heart attack at the sight of this thing. My girlfriend arrived soon after and found me sitting outside practically petrified. She began questioning me, and I lost it right then and there and burst into tears apologizing and telling her how sorry I was for not believing her. I tried my very best to explain what I had just witnessed, and she then started freaking out as well. I still have no idea as to what this creature was or what it wanted, but regardless, we never saw it again on our trip. All I do know is that if it was some sort of animal that lived long ago, they're obviously extremely rare and most likely very territorial. We don't share the story with any of our friends or close relatives, but I know what I saw that day. I guess there are things in this world that we still can't explain, and we never went back to that cabin again.
This story didn't personally happen to me, but rather my uncle when he was a kid, maybe around 14 or 15 years old. My uncle was a type of kid who people will refer to as a bad kid, and he was, as he did some drugs and drank at a young age. One day, my uncle and his friends decided to go to a rural spot in the woods just north of East Georgia. miles from my uncle's house. They lit a fire and drank till they were completely wasted. They chose this spot as they knew they would not get in trouble if they were to get caught by someone if they did this somewhere else. At one point, the fire was starting to die down, and everyone was just kind of talking to each other, when all of a sudden they stopped talking, as if a switch had been turned off. One of my uncle's friends in his drunken state said, "Shh, do you guys hear that?" My uncle and the rest of his friends laughed it off as they were still drunk, but then became very quiet when they heard what sounded like branches snapping just a little bit beyond the tree line. They all stared at the trees trying to find the source of the noises. That's when one of the girls screamed at the top of her lungs and pointed from behind a tree. My uncles and his friend looked that way, and according to my uncle, he saw a huge silhouette maybe 8 or 9 feet tall, hiding behind a big tree. My uncle told everyone to run. They all got into their cars and floored it down towards the main road, not caring how drunk they were. My uncle said that he saw what he could only describe as pure terror in the rearview mirror of the truck. There was a very tall and very big gorilla-like creature staring at them as they drove away. Until this day, my uncle was convinced that what he saw that night was, or is something similar, to a Sasquatch.
To give a little background information, I was around 16 years old when this happened. My brother and I were going on our annual Boy Scout camping trip at a national park called Oxbow Regional Park in Gresham, Oregon. It was a very nice place, especially for camping. Lakes, mountains, forests, and rivers. Our trip went there every year and would usually be the last camping trip of the year, which is why we decided to go. Needless to say, the troop left Roseburg at around 5 and drove the 3-hour-long drive to Gresham and eventually the park. We got there at around 7:30 p.m. and we immediately started unpacking and started getting up our tents as we didn't have much time till dark. Once we set up the tents, my brother and I go in and ate our rest of our McDonald's that we had brought during the ride as we had not eaten for hours. By 10 p.m., the scoutmaster said it was lights out. I didn't understand why we couldn't just stay up late and chat as long as we were quiet, but hey, it's the scoutmaster's rules. My brother is a heavy sleeper, so he went to bed instantly. Me, on the other hand, am not a heavy sleeper. In fact, I had trouble falling asleep ever since I was 12, which I still don't know why till this day. Fast forward about 2 hours later, everyone in the campground is asleep by now, but I was just in my sleeping bag rolling around trying to get comfortable. After I had finally gotten a good spot, I heard something moving slowly in the lake about 15 or 20 feet away from our tent. We were the closest to the lake, so I heard it perfectly. I don't know what it was, but imagine someone walking in the lake very slowly. I suddenly became suspicious and somewhat paranoid and decided to take a look at what it was. I was hoping to see a fellow scout dipping their feet in the water, but that unfortunately wasn't the case. I quietly sat up, unzipped my tent, and looked towards the lake to see what it was. What I saw standing in the water was something I wasn't expecting to see. It was dark out and the only source of light was from the moon. I saw what looked like a very huge hairy man, maybe about 8 feet tall, in the water while looking down as if it were looking for something. Its arms were very big and definitely had a lot of muscle. I tried my best not to freak out and went back into my tent, but unfortunately my brother must have heard the noises as well, and he got up asking what it was. I motioned for him to be quiet and he obliged. I looked back outside, still looking at this man or whatever it was. My eyes couldn't stop focusing on it. That's when I felt a cramp in my right leg and let out a short scream. Whatever it was then turned its head toward me very fast. I only saw its face for a brief second before it took off into the woods. Its face was ape-like and looked very unsettling. It had glowing yellow eyes and what looked like fangs. I went back into my tent crying, but trying not to make any sounds. Keep in mind that my brother is a lot younger than I was, so I could tell that he was starting to get freaked out as well. I whispered to him that we had to be very quiet, and then I finally decided to tell him what it was. Very quietly, I told him that I saw something standing out into the lake that looked very big. For all I know, it very well could have been a bear, but what I saw looked more closely related to a human than a bear. We didn't fall asleep that night, and we left the following day and never told a single person about this story.